Generation 1. After Pokemon Red and Green were released, it took less than a year for Game Freak to issue an update, Pokemon Blue, by mail order only. This Blue update would become the base code for the international releases, Red and Blue, which didn't release in America until 2.5 years after the original release of Red and Green. They were the second to last games to be released for the original Game Boy in Europe. Pokemon Yellow would be the last. Personally, I've had the great pleasure of playing most of the Pokemon games in the order they came out. This means that the first generation Pokemon games were the first ones that I played. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, they were among the first video games that I played. And while I don't think that I beat them when I was young, I did enjoy them enough to play the rest of the series. Going back to them, it was apparent that they were rife with issues, but the best way to start is at the beginning. First, though, I need to talk about how I will be using the remakes, Fire Red and Leaf Green. These games are significantly different from the originals, but the ways that they are different are mostly in ways that the Gen 3 games are different from the Gen 1 games. Because 3rd Gen games will get their own video, I don't want to go over all of the changes to the core systems of the Pokemon games in this. Instead, I will point out if an issue exists, and say whether or not it was fixed by the time the remakes came out, and go over why if it wasn't. If I point out that there was something that was fixed by Pokemon Yellow, it's usually safe to assume that the change was also implemented for future games, including the remakes. Also, for points where the remakes do differ from the originals in ways other than the core mechanics, I will go over them. Now, on to the beginning. Generation 1 games start with the player in Pallet Town. That's right, named after a platform used for storing and moving goods. Just kidding. It's actually a misspelling of the tool an artist used to store the colors that they are working with. Actually, the rest of the towns in Kanto are named after colors, which is supposed to complete an artist-centric theme for the region. The player is sent to look for Professor Oak, who has a gift for the player, but he's nowhere to be found, so you leave town, only to be interrupted by Oak before you can enter the grass. Going into the tall grass without a Pokemon is dangerous, you know. Oak drags you back to his lab where his grandson, your chosen named rival, is also waiting. Oak offers 3 Pokemon to you, and because they're special, you get the first pick. Offered to you are Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and Charmander. Take whichever you like. Your rival will always take the Pokemon that has type advantage. In Pokemon Yellow, this is different. Instead, there's only one Pokemon offered to you, an Eevee. But before you get the chance to take it, your rival cuts in front of you, leaving you with the Pikachu that Oak just caught on Route 1. Now fully equipped with a Pokemon, you're ready to head to the next city over, Viridian. Once you're there, you head to the mart to buy some potions and balls. But wait, Oak has a package. Quick, head back to Pallet and drop it off in exchange for a Pokédex, and head back. If you try not to get Oak's parcel, the way forward is blocked by an old man. The intro to the Gen 1 Pokemon games is short, and I think that serves as a large benefit to the player, as the Gen 1 games tend to make walking around a painfully slow experience. It also doesn't baby the player too much in the introduction to battling. If anything, I would make this intro experience shorter, cut the Oak's parcel mission, and just let the player be on their way once they leave town. Give them the Pokédex with the starter. Now that we're back at the mart, it's time to buy some potions and balls. Except in Red and Blue, this mart doesn't sell potions, so I guess it's only balls. Fine. This of course is fixed by Yellow, now you can buy both. You decide to check out the gym in town, but the leader isn't there, so we're back on the road. East of town is Route 22. Knowing how numbers work, we should be headed for Route 2, not 22. That's north of town. If you do decide to venture into Route 22, there's a completely optional battle with your rival, and a patch of grass to catch Pokemon. Heading towards Route 2, the old man blocking the path has gotten up, and if you talk to him, he'll show you how to catch a Pokemon. In the remakes, this is no longer optional, and the old man will give the player the Teachy TV, an item that can be used to go over game mechanics. Back north of town, Route 2 turns into Viridian Forest, which is full of trainers and bug types. In Red and Blue, some of the tiles won't have encounters on them, so if you're careful, you can avoid the encounters. In Yellow, all the tiles can spawn encounters, albeit at a very low rate. After exiting the forest, the player can then enter Pewter City. Pewter is home to the first gym that we can actually challenge, the Rock-type gym with leader Brock, and one trainer with suspect spatial awareness. Here's where the problems with the Gen 1 games truly start. There are only 2 Pokemon in Red and Blue who get super effective moves against rock types before level 15 that you can obtain before Pewter: Squirtle and Bulbasaur. There is 1 Pokemon who gets a move that hits neutral: Butterfree. That means the only moves that you can get in game that aren't resisted by Brock are level 12 Butterfree's Confusion and your starter's Bubble or Vine Whip. That's it. 1 neutral move, and the Charmander trainer doesn't even get a super effective move. In the remakes, Charmander gets Metal Claw, a move that doesn't exist in Gen 1, which hits rock types super effectively to help alleviate this problem. In Pokemon Yellow, Mankey is added to Route 22, and learns Low Kick at level 9. Also, the moveset for Nidoran Male is changed so that it learns Double Kick at level 12 instead of 43. In Pokemon Yellow, however, the player misses out on getting a starter Pokemon at this point, which means that the number of super effective moves is still capped at 2. The remakes keep the Mankey and Nidoran changes, which means that each starter has 3 options for hitting Brock's Pokemon for super effective damage. This is a significant improvement over the Generation 1 games, because instead of making the game easier by weakening Brock, they instead give the player the tools necessary to beat him. Anyway, once Brock is defeated, the player earns the Boulder Badge, which raises the attack stat of the holder's Pokemon. And now I have to talk about badge boosts. In the Gen 1 games, your Pokemon get bonus stat increases when you earn certain gym badges. Each time you earn a gym badge that gives out a stat increase, it increases that stat for all used Pokemon by 12.5%. Except, for some reason it recalculates these boosts whenever stats are calculated in battle. Hit by a String Shot, more attack. Hit by a Tail Whip, more attack. Use an X item, more attack. All the other badges that get stat increases suffer from the same issue, meaning that your Pokemon will constantly be getting stat increases during battles throughout playing the game. Although, switching or leveling up will end the increases. This was obviously not an intended feature, but for some reason it was not removed by Yellow, and instead the problem isn't solved until the remakes, which also lower the amount of the increase to 10%. In their fixed form, badge boosts serve as a role showing the progression of the trainer as opposed to just the Pokemon that they use, much like the other 2 functions of gym badges, being able to use HMs outside of battle, and raising the level limit for trading Pokemon. Now I have to talk about speedrunning a little bit. Glitchless Pokemon speedruns, for the most part, become solo running the game with 1 Pokemon, using manipulations to lower the chance of wild encounters, and using X items to overcome an avoidable strong encounter. In the Generation 1 games, the best Pokemon for this is Nidoking. In Red and Blue, picking a Squirtle for level 8 Bubble and switch training against Brock to level your Nidoran was a must. With Double Kick added by Yellow, that nuance was no longer necessary. Get a Nidoran, never use another Pokemon. Interestingly, the best choice for the remakes is Blastoise, meaning that picking Squirtle is still the way to go. Glitched Pokemon speedruns in Generation 1 can be completed in less than 15 minutes. Heading to route through a gauntlet of trainers awaits on the path to Mount Moon. You make it to the cave after the stretch, and luckily there's a Pokemon Center outside. Mount Moon itself is a complex cave that's actually pretty easy to get a little lost in for people unfamiliar with the layout. After a bit of exploration, you can discover that Team Rocket has taken up hold in the cave looking for fossils. After giving them a thorough thrashing, the player is tasked with the toughest decision in a Pokemon game. Do they want Dome or not? After contemplating for a while, men of culture will choose not to forsake Lord Helix and make their way out of the cave. In Pokemon Yellow, the player is confronted with a battle against a pair of Team Rocket trainers stylized to look like the Rocket trainers that serve as the antagonists in the anime. Now, I'm going to talk about the bag in Generation 1. In the Gen 1 games, there is no division of items, and you can only hold up to 20 items in your bag. Items appear in your bag in the order that you will pick them up in. Important key items such as your town map and eventually bicycle will always take up slots, and cannot be discarded. Only deposited in the PC if you want to make room in your bag. Due to how cool it is to be able to revive a fossil in the game, both the Dome Fossil and Helix Fossil are also listed as key items, meaning that one of them will always be taking up one of your precious few bag slots, unless you head to a PC to deposit it. There are a total of 19 key items in Generation 1, but luckily 6 of them can be given up through natural gameplay, and the 2 fossils are exclusive. Still, if you reach the end of the game with the 12 other key items in your inventory, that doesn't leave much room to be able to carry Pokeballs, potions, TMs, HMs, or other useful items you may find through your journey. The remakes have a fix for this, but I'll discuss that when I talk about 3rd Gen as a whole. After leaving Mount Moon, the player heads to Cerulean City. This is the first real branching point for trainers who choose different starters. The Bulbasaur trainer or the Pokemon Yellow player might want to head straight to the gym. A player who picked up a Pikachu in Viridian Forest can also head straight to the gym. Misty is the gym leader of the Cerulean Gym, and her gym has the design of being an indoor pool. This makes sense for a water-type gym, and I actually like this detail. In fact, you can even fish inside the gym in the Generation 1 games. Actually, you can fish inside them in the remakes as well, but you can't catch anything in the remakes. Again, we have the problem where only 2 Pokemon get super effective moves against Misty's water types before her gym. Sort of. Misty's Starmie is also a Psychic type, making it weak to Zubat and Paris' Leech Life, and level 20 Beedrill's Twin Needle. Leech Life is only base 20 power though. Twin Needle is as well, but it hits twice. Also, on the route north of Cerulean, one of 2 grass types, Bellsprout and Oddish, game dependent, are also available before challenging the gym becomes a necessity. At least Misty isn't resistant to the normal type moves prevalent in the early game. In the remakes, there's more options for super effective attacks. Bite is super effective against Starmie, and is added to Squirtle's learnable moves. In addition, TM9 Bullet Seed can be found in Mount Moon. If the player isn't feeling confident about beating Misty when they enter Cerulean, they can challenge the 5 trainers on the Nugget Bridge north of town. Actually, there's 7 trainers, with a rival battle to start, and an impossible to accept Team Rocket recruitment at the end. The player's rival gives the hint that they should head to the end of the route and meet Bill, the man who created the Pokemon PC. Upon meeting Bill, well, he's a Pokemon. I'm not sure if this is explained somewhere I haven't looked, but man, Bill is a strange guy. After helping him become human again, Bill thanks you by handing you a ticket to the SS Anne. And then, we get to talk about tile sets. In the 1st Gen games, you can escape rope and dig to the last Pokemon Center that you used. What areas you can use an escape rope or dig from depends on what tiles are used in that area. And in Red and Blue, there's some questionable choices. For example, you can escape rope from Bill's back to Cerulean. Most of these tile sets are fixed by the time Yellow comes out, but Dig still has the exploit of bringing you back to the last Pokemon Center that you used, as opposed to the entrance of the area, like in the remakes. Back in Cerulean, a house that was closed for investigation is now open, and you can walk through a hole in the wall and beat a Rocket Grunt for the Dig TM, and leave town. The next stop is Vermilion, which can be reached by way of the underground path. The gym in Vermilion is blocked by a tree you need Cut to remove. The Cascade badge allows for Cut to be used, but the player does not have the HM for it yet, so it's off to the SS Anne. The SS Anne offers the player a choice: defeating all the trainers on the boat, painstakingly walking back to the Vermilion Poke Center, or just battle your rival on the boat and grab Cut from the captain. Once you leave after getting Cut, the SS Anne departs, and the player will never get another chance to battle the missed trainers. In the Gen 1 originals, there's no place to heal aboard the SS Anne. And as the player doesn't have the bike yet, or running shoes, the walk to the center is a long one. They are on opposite sides of Vermilion. In the remakes, there's a bed on board to heal, making clearing out the boat much less of a task. The SS Anne is also home to a trash can with a Great Ball inside it, the only time in the game that this happens. With Cut in hand, the player can now enter Surge's gym, where they're faced with the toughest puzzle in a Pokemon game. Now, the Surge puzzle isn't actually that hard in theory. Once you find the first switch, the second one is nearby. The problem is the puzzle is random, and if you get the second switch wrong, the puzzle resets. Actually, there's another problem with the puzzle too. It has a glitch. For some reason, the second switch can always be in the top left bin, even if the first switch isn't adjacent. This is fixed by Yellow. I hate this puzzle, because instead of actually being a way to test the player, it relies on pure luck once you know the possible options. Luckily, Surge himself isn't too much of a challenge. For the first time in the game, I feel the player is given more than enough adequate tools to beat a gym leader, between Sandshrew, the evolved Nidoking or Nidoqueen, Geodude, Diglett, and the Dig TM. After defeating Surge, the player can talk to the chairman of the Pokemon Fan Club to get a bike voucher, which can be exchanged for a bicycle in Cerulean. With a bike in hand, the player heads east towards Rock Tunnel. Surge's badge gives the player another badge boost, this time for defense. That isn't the stat that he says it increases, though. He said it increases speed. This isn't the only time that the Gen 1 games will straight up lie to the player. They will also get told that Ghost types are super effective against Psychic types, that Guard specs decrease the damage taken from special attacks, and that you can't pick up all of the items in the Safari Zone in one go, among others. All of these blatant lies are fixed by the remakes, with Surge's badge now giving the speed boost that it's supposed to. Rock Tunnel is a dark cave where the player is meant to utilize the Flash HM, except navigating Rock Tunnel without Flash isn't all that difficult in the games. The outsides of the walls and the ladders are highlighted for the player, and the layout of the map is such that all the player has to do is not go backwards in order to make their way through with no issue. All that you need to be worried about is running out of resources while battling the trainers inside the cave. If somebody does want to get the HM for Flash to make navigating the cave easier, the player has to go through Diglett Cave near Vermilion and come out the other side near Pewter, then head south to the gate where an Oak's Aid will give the HM if the player has more than 10 Pokemon registered in the Pokédex. This is pretty far out of the way for a trainer, because if they leave from Vermilion, they won't have a bike, and because of the limited bag space in the games, as well as the fact that Flash isn't necessary for any other part of the game, most of the time players should just avoid having to go out of their way for Flash. The remakes make the tunnel more of a challenge to navigate, as instead of darkening the entire map they decrease the field of view, making it harder to know where the walls and ladders are, although the base don't go backwards design still doesn't make it much of a challenge. When the player exits the tunnel, they enter Lavender Town. Lavender Town is grim, downright depressing, and home to the Pokemon Tower, which serves as the region's Pokemon graveyard. Upon entering the tower, there's a rival battle, who ask why you're here and point out that none of your Pokemon are dead, before giving the hint that there's a Marowak somewhere in the tower. If the player makes their way to the top of the tower, there's a ghost that you can't beat, so for now there's nothing more to do in Lavender Town. The way south of Lavender is blocked by a Snorlax, so west is the only path to take. The guard at the gate is thirsty, so it's back to the underground. Once you exit, you make your way into Celadon. The Martin Celadon is a unique multi-story mall, with all sorts of unique items that can't be bought anywhere else in the game, including TMs and a Pokédoll, an in-use battle item that allows for the successful completion of any wild Pokemon battle. On the top floor, there's a vending machine that sells drinks, which will be useful for those thirsty guards. Shopping in Generation 1 games is interesting, as technically money is a limited resource in the game. With the Pokédoll in hand, you can head back to Lavender Tower, throw it at the unbeatable ghost, and rescue Mr. Fuji from the Team Rocket trainers. He will give you the Pokéflute, so now you can head south from Lavender Town to Fuchsia City, where you can walk into the gym to fight Koga, the 5th gym leader. On the way, if you have caught 50 or more Pokemon, you can pick up the EXP All, a key item that shares the XP gained during battles between all of your Pokemon, from an Oakade at the end of Route 15. In the remakes, this was changed to the EXP Share, a held item which split the EXP gained between two Pokemon. Personally, I like the Gen 1 variant more, but didn't catch enough Pokemon in my playthrough, so I never got to pick it up. After entering Fuchsia... Wait, I missed something, didn't I? You see, there's a bunch of rocket grunts hanging out in Celadon that I just ignored. But if you see what they're up to in the game corner, there's actually a Team Rocket hideout there, where you can pick up the Sylph Scope. This is what's actually supposed to be used to fight the ghost at the top of Lavender Tower, which is the Marowak that your rival foreshadowed. This rocket hideout skip is a bit strange, considering that this is the player's first chance to battle Giovanni, the Team Rocket leader. But from everything I've gathered, the Pokédoll skip that allows the player to shortcut the rocket hideout was something that the designers of the game knew about, and decided to keep in. Or didn't have the ability to remove before Pokemon Yellow. In the remakes, this is fixed, of course, making this rocket base, interaction with Giovanni, and the Sylph Scope mandatory. Erica is the 4th gym leader, and her gym can be found in the southwest corner of Celadon, completely away from all of the other important parts of the city. It's also blocked by a cut tree, but that doesn't stop a creepy old man from peering in the windows to spy on the woman inside. Erica trains Grass-type Pokemon, meaning she is the first gym leader where picking Charmander is an advantage. Grass types are also weak to flying, and just about every player should have picked up a flying type to get Fly. The HM Fly can be found in a house just west of Celadon. This allows for much easier travel around the map, as the player can return to any city they've been to. back to Erica. When are you actually supposed to battle Erica? Is it A, before the game corner, B, after the game corner but before the top of Pokemon Tower, or C, after the Pokemon Tower? She has 2 level 29 Pokemon as opposed to game corner Giovanni's 1, so it should be after that. But if you get the Sylph Scope, why wouldn't you head straight to the Pokemon Tower? I like her gym a lot. Some countries in the gym actually go a long way to making this feel more like a place where grass-type trainers would actually train. And there's also a lot of trainers here. But there's a real problem that unless you start looking for it, it's out of the way. It's on the complete other side of town from the Poke Center and Game Corner, and it's due south of the Giant Mart. There's also routing issues. There's nothing that stops you from finding Erica as the penultimate gym leader. Actually, this goes for the rest of the gym leaders, with the exception of Koga, as you need his badge in order to use Surf. I actually don't mind how the region opens up after you get the Poke Flute to clear Snorlaxes, but I wish there was more explicit in-game advice leading to Erica being where the player should go next. After finally defeating Erica, you can head down the bike route to Fuchsia and battle Koga. Koga's gym is full of invisible walls, and I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to give the feeling that he's a type of ninja. He also uses poison types. Fun fact about poison types in Generation 1 is that int and bug types are super effective against each other. I'm unsure if this was intended for the first games, seeing as this was not the case for the remakes, meaning that this could have just been one of those things about the games. In either case, this means that Koga's gym is in the middle of 3 consecutive gyms in the first generation that are weak to bug-type moves. In order to get the Surf HM and the Strength HM that Erica and Koga's gym badges let you use, you need to venture through the Safari Zone, a multi-zone section of the game that is home to some unique Pokemon, but has a unique catching game. In the Safari Zone, you pay 500 and are given 30 Safari Balls with which to catch Pokemon. They are the same strength as an Ultra Ball. Which reminds me, catching Pokemon in Generation 1 is a little bit different. It uses a lot more random numbers than the current catch rate, and also has different ways of utilizing the different types of balls. In Generation 1 there were only 5 balls: Pokeballs, Great Balls, Ultra Balls, Safari Balls, and one Master Ball. The catch mechanic works by generating 2 random numbers, the first with bounds set by the ball, and then comparing that to modifiers set by status and the Pokemon's catch rate. Pokeballs generate 1 to 255, Great 1 to 200, and Ultra and Safari 1 to 150. If the random number is less than the status modifier, it is caught. If it isn't caught that way, it goes into a more recognizable formula that utilizes the ball catch modifier and the target's current and max HP. The shake mechanic is also different, with the ball completely missing being an option in the game. There are some notable problems with the Gen 1 catching mechanics, like the fact that sometimes a Great Ball is better than an Ultra Ball, and the first status check that allows for easier capture of high HP and high catch rate targets. A Sleeping Mewtwo with full HP may, on average, be caught in about 6 Ultra Balls in Generation 1. In the remakes, it would take more than 60 on average. The Safari catching game is even stranger. Instead of battling to lower the Pokemon's HP, the player is given rocks and bait to throw at the Pokemon to change their chances of capture. Also, Pokemon will run away based on their base speed. Using rocks will increase the Pokemon's likeliness to run by 2, but also make them twice as likely to be caught. Bait will make them half as likely to run, but also half as likely to be caught. The Safari game ends when the player runs out of balls, or takes 500 steps inside the Safari Zone. Getting to the secret house at the end shouldn't be too much of an issue with 500 steps, nor should picking up the gold teeth that can be traded for strength with the Warden. In the remakes, the Safari game works differently, based on the Gen 3 Hoenn Safari game, and the player gets an extra 100 steps to reach the end. With Surf and Strength now in hand, we can surf south from Fuchsia to head towards the Seafoam. Actually, we're supposed to head back north to Saffron City, using one of the drinks that we bought at the top of the Celadon Pokemart in order to clear the guard's thirst. This is another routing issue, as Koga is listed as the 5th gym leader and Sabrina the 6th, even though Saffron is closer to Celadon on the 4th gym. Also, unlocking Surf with the 5th badge allows you to cut the 6th gym in Saffron entirely and head straight to the 7th gym. Why not make Surf unlocked with the 6th gym badge, be that either Sabrina or Koga, and adjust the levels of Pokemon in the gym if necessary? I think it's worth pointing out that Kanto is designed after part of Japan. with Saffron City as the stand-in for Tokyo, even though by population Saffron is smaller than Celadon. A little unrealistic considering that Tokyo is the most populous city in the world. At least it has enough housing for its inhabitants, unlike most other cities in Pokemon. The gym here is being blocked by Team Rocket. In order to clear Team Rocket from the city, you need to defeat Giovanni at the top of the Sylph Company building. In order to reach him, the player makes their way through a maze of teleportation paths and has to do a rival battle. For dealing with the problem of Team Rocket, the CEO of Sylph will reward the player with the Master Ball. Now that Team Rocket is out of the way, we can head to the gym. You know, the gym next to the gym. One is actually a dojo with fighting-type trainers, and if you defeat all of them, you can pick up an extra Pokemon, either Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan. Sabrina's gym is another maze of teleportation paths, perhaps due to a relationship with the Sylph Company in the same city, and she is a Psychic-type trainer. Psychic types in Generation 1 have a problem. To start, they're supposed to be weak to two types, Bug and Ghost, but due to an error they're actually immune to Ghost types, which they're supposed to be weak to. And even if they weren't immune to Ghost types, there's only one Ghost type move in the game that would benefit from this weakness, the base 20 Lick. The only other weakness for Psychic types is Bug, where the strongest move is Pin Missile, which can only be learned by two Pokemon, Beedrill and Jolteon, which doesn't get the move until level 48 in Red and Blue, and 36 in Yellow. Beedrill also gets the second strongest Bug move, Twin Needle. A problem that Beedrill shares with all of the Gen 1 Ghost types is that due to their secondary poison typing, they're actually weak to Psychic type attacks. So the Pokemon that are supposed to be good against Psychic types are actually weak to them, but what about the Pokemon that resist Psychic types? Psychic types. Psychic types resist themselves, and are the only resistance for Psychic types in Generation 1. Adding to the Psychic type problem is that most Psychic types have large special stats. In Generation 1, attacking and defending against special attacks were part of the same stat, called Special, meaning that there were only 5 stats in the Generation 1 games. Also, each stat was controlled by a variable called a DV, which works slightly differently than IVs in Pokemon. They could only have between 1 and 15 of them. EVs also worked a little differently in Generation 1, as each Pokemon, instead of being limited to 508 total EVs, could have up to 252 in each stat. After defeating Sabrina, you can fly to Pallet Town and surf south to Cinnabar Island. Blaine's gym is currently locked, but the secret key can be found inside the burnt-out Pokemon Mansion. The Pokemon Mansion is a unique area, as it is host to most of the fire types inside the region. In fact, outside of the route directly west of Lavender Town, where either Vulpix or Growlithe is found, it is the only place where you can naturally encounter fire types in the region. Due to high-level encounters in the mansion, it makes an excellent place to train up your Pokemon. It also offers most of the important lore of the region, detailing the experiments of scientists who are trying to recreate Mew. Blaine's gym, after being unlocked with the secret key, has a trivia mechanic which can allow the player the opportunity of skipping the trainer battles. Of course, you can also just face the trainers and not have to do trivia. Blaine's gym sort of follows with the scientist-type theme of the Pokemon Mansion, although I'm unsure what this has to do with fire types. The stretch between Blaine and the 8th gym leader is actually the shortest in the game. Just fly to Viridian and you're there. This is actually the point where the remakes differ the most from the original games. In the remakes, at this point, Bill will offer to take you the first of the Sevi Isles. Of course, an irresponsible trainer can just say no, but if you decide to follow Bill, you will be taken to one island, where his friend is trying to connect the PC to the rest of the region. A couple of other small plots involving a missing child and a biker gang take place, and then you can head back to Kanto. I'll talk more about the Sevi Isles later, but I like this addition to the games, as it serves as a short break between two otherwise very cramped gym battles. Up to this point, the 8th gym leader has been a mystery. In fact, not even the gym guide in front of the gym actually knows his identity, although there is a massive hint on the floors of the gym. The gym has spinning tile floors, just like the Rocket hideout in the game corner. And just like the game corner, At the end of this, we find Giovanni, who has dropped his signature Kangaskhan, or Persian in yellow, in favor of a team of all ground types. This is another instance where the Bulbasaur Squirtle starter has an advantage. In fact, both Squirtle and Bulbasaur are strong against 3 gyms, while Charmander is only strong against 1. Even Charizard's secondary, flying typing, only helps to make it even more effective against the gym it's already strong against. That's some disparity in the starters. After defeating Giovanni, he states that he is disbanding Team Rocket and devoting his life to the study of Pokemon, thus ending the main plot of the Generation 1 games. Gen 1 games actually don't have all that much in the way of plot when you think about it. There's an evil gym leader who's running a mafia-like group that's attempting to gain power in the region, and the main character goes around beating him and his team at various points in the game. I don't mind it, but I think that if you're playing the game for the plot, you're missing the point of the game. There isn't meant to be a big dramatic plot. The player's meant to go around gathering badges and becoming a strong trainer, and the subplot of Team Rocket doesn't distract from this being what the game is about. With all the badges in hand, you can head to Route 22 and enter the Pokemon League. But first, another battle with your rival. If you play the gyms in order, you will have fought 3 more gyms since the last time you fought your rival, the longest stretch of the game without seeing him. With him out of the way, you can make your way to the Pokemon League reception gate in Route 23. Here, a series of guards make sure that you have all of the badges before proceeding to Victory Road. This is more than just a formality in Generation 1. You can make your way to the gate before you even earn any badges, and you only need up to the 5th badge to use every HM in the game. I was sure that at some point in the past, I had gotten to the gate with every badge except for Sabrina's. So much so that I checked to see if Giovanni's gym even opened up before you had the rest of the badges. It doesn't, and I was wrong. But with the way the game is designed, getting turned away by the gate guards is actually something that could happen. Once you clear the gate guards, you can enter Victory Road, the game's final route. Victory Road's trainers are significantly stronger than most of the other trainers, bar Giovanni's gym leader battle, and are supposed to serve as the final test for the player before entering the Elite Four. There's also a pretty decent strength boulder puzzle that needs to be completed in order to progress. This is my second favorite obstacle for the player in the game. It's simple, but just difficult enough that somebody might mess it up once while going through if they didn't plan ahead. The remakes don't fix any of the issues with this part of the game, but also don't remove the fun from the Victory Road puzzle. Once Victory Road is clear, the player is ready for the Elite Four. The Elite Four is a gauntlet of 4 trainers: Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance, where the player will not have the opportunity to go back and heal between battles. These are supposed to be the toughest battles in the game. Lorelei, the Ice-type trainer, is the first member of the Elite Four. Her battles are interesting, but most of the time Lorelei's AI is a hindrance to how much of a challenge she is. In my battle with Lorelei, I showed one of the issues with Gen 1: critical hits. You see, in Generation 1, how often a Pokemon will score a critical hit is based on its base speed divided by 2. High critical hit moves will crit 8 times more often. That means moves such as Slash and Razor Leaf will always crit if a Pokemon has base 65 speed or higher. And a base 60 speed Pokemon like Farfetch'd will crit with Slash almost 90% of the time. Now, due to a bug, Focus Energy and Dire Hit, which are supposed to increase your chance to critical hit, will instead quarter their likelihood to critical hit. Oops. The amount of damage that a critical hit does in Generation 1 is also a bit strange. It doubles the value of a Pokemon's level in the base damage calculation. This equates to almost doubling the strength of the attack, but not quite. Also, critical hits will ignore stat changes. All stat changes. This means that if you use a move like Amnesia or Swords Attack to increase your Pokemon's stats, or use a move like Leer to decrease the opponent's stats, scoring a critical hit can actually do less damage. These issues weren't fixed by Pokemon Yellow, but by the time the remakes came out they had been resolved. Bruno is the next Elite Four member. Pop quiz. What type of trainer is Bruno? If you answered Fighting, why does he lead Onix? If he is a Rock-type trainer, why is his strongest Pokemon a Machamp? It's not like there aren't enough fighting types in Generation 1. If Bruno used Poliwrath and Primeape instead of the 2 Onix, he would still have a team of 5. This is another issue with the Generation 1 games, though. A good chunk of the time, there aren't enough Pokemon in a particular type for a gym or Elite Four member to have Pokemon all of the same type. Koga's gym has Psychic-type trainers. Sabrina's gym has Ghost-type trainers. Lorelei is supposed to be an Ice-type trainer, but she has a Slowbro. Slowbro is not an Ice-type. And Onix is not a Fighting type. There's 151 Pokemon in the game, and the disparity in the number of Pokemon in each type is very high. Did you know that Generation 1 is the only generation where there are more normal-type Pokemon than any other type? That's cool. Good thing there's a normal-type gym to take advantage of all those normal types in this game. Oh wait, there isn't. Which is a shame, because there's a lot of cool normal types in Generation 1. I'm not joking. Chansey, Tauros, Lickitung, Kangaskhan, Persian, Clefable, Porygon, and Wigglytuff are all interesting normal types in the games. And outside of Giovanni using either Kangaskhan or Persian in his non-gym battles, no high-profile trainer takes advantage of this. The remakes, instead of taking the opportunity to change the Pokemon so that the trainers stay more on type, instead took the route of staying true to the originals. I don't fault them too much for this, but I wish they had done more to spruce up the games. Agatha is supposed to be a Ghost-type trainer, but strangely, all of her Pokemon are actually Poison types? And once again, you can encounter the Psychic-type problem that exists in the Generation 1 games. Except, this time you get to be on the beatdown. In the Generation 1 games, all of Agatha's Pokemon are weak to ground, but in the remakes, Haunter and Gengar are immune to ground-type moves. I have to applaud Agatha for using a full 2/3 of the Ghost-type Pokemon though, and I don't exactly want to face a Ghastly in the Elite Four. Bruno only uses half of the Fighting types. Lorelei uses 4/5 of the Ice types, but she's aided mostly by the fact that Dugong and Cloyster only gain their Ice typing after evolving. Lance is another trainer who uses 2/3 of his available type. The Dratini line are the only Dragon types in the game. Earlier I mentioned how many Ghost-type moves benefited from Stab, just being Lick. Speaking of Lick, in Generation 1 Lickitung doesn't get Lick. Pop quiz. How many Dragon-type moves benefit from Stab in Generation 1? 0. The only Dragon-type move is Dragon Rage, a move that will always deal 40 damage. Did you know that Generation 1 is the only generation where there are more moves than Pokemon available? No joke. There's 165 moves and 151 Pokemon. But there still doesn't feel like there's enough options for some types. I've already mentioned every damaging bug-type move in the game in this script. Really. The only ones are Leech Life, Twin Needle, and Pin Missile. Butterfree doesn't learn a damaging bug-type move in the game. Normal types get an abundant amount of moves, including some that would get their type changed. Bite, Sand Attack, Gust, and Karate Chop. Now let's talk about some of the best moves in the game. Blizzard is an Ice-type move with base 120 power and 90% accuracy in Generation 1. Fire Blast, Hydro Pump, and Thunder have the same base power, but Fire Blast has 85% accuracy, and Hydro Pump 80%. Thunder only has 70% accuracy. Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Surf, and Thunderbolt all have 95 base power and 100% accuracy. Almost. In the Generation 1 games, there was an error with how the accuracy of moves was calculated, and all moves have at least a 1 in 256% chance of missing. And moves that have an additional chance of missing have an extra 1 in 256% chance. Speaking of Hydro Pump, in my battle with Lance, his Gyarados uses the move 6 times, despite the fact that it only has 5 PP. No, Lance didn't use a PP up on his Pokemon. In Generation 1, the amount of PP used by the CPU isn't kept track of, meaning that Lance could have kept using Hydro Pump indefinitely if he so decided. It's worth noting that which category a move falls into is based on its type. Fire, Water, Grass, Electric, Psychic, Ice, and Dragon are special moves. Normal fighting, ghost, flying, rock, ground, and poison are all physical. The player beats Lance, but surprise, there's another battle, as your rival has already beaten Lance and become champion. And I think I'm going to let this champion battle speak for itself. My rival leads Pidgeot against my Nidoqueen. I use an X speed as the Pidgeot prepares Sky Attack. I use a second X speed as the attack goes off. Feeling lucky, I go for a third, as another Sky Attack is prepped, and go for a fourth as it goes off, doing less damage now thanks to my badge boosts. I heal up and go for an X accuracy as the Sky Attacks continue. I make a mistake and double X accuracy, and then decide to set up one more X speed for safe measure. I then proceed to click Horn Drill 6 times and sweep the champion. Usually, the Elite Four and Champion battles serve to be very difficult battles. There's more of a jump in level increase between Lorelei's weakest Pokemon and the Champion's strongest than there is between Koga and Giovanni. In Generation 1, there was a slight problem with X items. Dire Hit didn't work as intended. X Special, X Speed, X Attack, and X Defense all gave out badge boosts. And X Accuracy made the accuracy of moves 100%. Horn Drill is a one-hit KO move that usually has 50% accuracy, and in Gen 1 always failed if you were slower than the opponent, which is why my X Speeds were necessary for this battle. Now, I am the Pokemon Champion. My team? Nidoqueen, Sandslash, Farfetch'd, Venusaur, Hypno, and Slowbro. What is there for post-game content? Well, in Gen 1, there's the option of trying to complete the Pokédex. The legendary bird trio, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, can be found in various locations throughout the game. Moltres is very easily found inside of Victory Road. Originally, I was planning on knocking out the legendary birds, but after reading about the catch mechanic, I thought I'd give catching them a try. And Moltres cooperated very nicely with me, getting in the first ball that I threw. Zapdos can be found in the power plant, an off-the-route area found south of the entrance to the rock tunnel. I like the power plant for two reasons. One, it makes Kanto feel a little bit more real. It has a power plant to show where their electricity comes from. The second is due to the out-of-the-way nature of the power plant. It makes it feel a little bit like a hidden area for the player to discover, rewarding players for exploring the map. Articuno can be found inside the Seafoam Islands. Some players will go through the Seafoam Islands to get to Cinnabar instead of surfing south from Pallet Town, but I wanted to save the puzzle for this moment. Strangely, on my way to the Seafoam Islands, I encountered a bug, where in a particular strip of water next to the Seafoam Islands, you can get encounters from the Pokemon Mansion. Surfing like this on the eastern side of Cinnabar will reveal what's probably the most famous bug in the first-gen games, Missing No, a glitch Pokemon that's missing an encounter number. Anyway, the Seafoam Islands are my favorite part of the game. I like the water flowing puzzles, and I like the fact that they aren't truly necessary in order to complete the game. Not being truly necessary for completion describes all of my favorite parts of Kanto: the power plant, the Seafoam Islands, and the routes that stretch from Lavender Town to Fuchsia, which can be avoided by taking the bike route next to Celadon. I wish these parts of the game were given more time to shine. Back to the Pokédex completion. There's one more legendary Pokemon that you can catch in the game: Mewtwo, who can be found in the cave west of the Nugget Bridge, which you can't enter until you're the Pokemon League champion. Mewtwo is the hardest to catch in the game, but I've already gone over how that doesn't mean much in Gen 1. Plus, the game gives you one Master Ball, and I intend to use it. What about the rest of the Pokemon? Can you actually complete the Pokédex? Well, no. Mew can never be naturally encountered in the game, but can be encountered by exploiting some of the game's systems. Also, unless you have a friend with the other game, there are some Pokemon that you will miss out on. To start, the other starters and their evolutionary lines can't be obtained except by trade, and your friend will be missing out on their starter if they decide to trade you theirs. You can only get either the Dome Fossil or Helix Fossil. you only get one Eevee to evolve. There is a choice as to whether or not you will get Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan. 3 evolutionary lines require trades to complete. And then there's the game-exclusive Pokemon. In Red and Blue, you can either get Sandshrew or Ekans, Oddish or Bellsprout, Meowth or Mankey, Vulpix or Growlithe, Pinsir or Scyther, and Electabuzz or Magmar. If you throw in their evolutionary lines, that's 11 Pokemon missing from each game. Throw in the trade evolutions, optional gifts, and Mew, and 26 out of the 151 Pokemon from the games can't be obtained in-game. Not great for a series with a tag of gotta catch 'em all. The post-game is where the remakes shine most when compared to the originals. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, the player gets to race around the Sevi Isles, collecting parts to help Celio connect the Kanto PC and the Hoenn PC. Also, there's a small subplot about the disbanding of Team Rocket after Giovanni's defeat. I don't care much for plot in Pokemon games, but this serves as the game's way to let you access the trade capabilities with the other 3rd-gen games. After completing the adventure in the Sevi Isles, there is a second-round rematch against the Elite Four members, where they now use higher-level Pokemon. This isn't necessarily a challenge, as rarely do increased levels in Pokemon actually accomplish much more than being a time sink, but rather a way to experience the legendary Pokemon, and other Pokemon you may have obtained in the post-game in a fashion that actually involves training them. More importantly, to me at least, by 3rd gen, you can obtain an entire living Pokédex. Between the 3rd gen games, special events, and the 1st gen remakes, and especially the Sevi Isles, every Pokemon in the National Dex can be obtained. And with a breeding daycare added, you don't have to trade away your only starter for your friend to get one. Nicely done, remakes. Now for a part of the script I'm going to call Bad Pokemon Design for this gen. For some reason, people believe that bad design is exclusive to newer games, but really it's been here from the start. First, I want to point out that I'm not going to hold Gen 1 graphics against the Pokemon here. Generation 1 graphics aren't good, and I don't want to hold that against the mouth under toxic sign coughing, or against every single Pokemon's back sprite. Even though I wish I could. Those are just bad graphic choices. Although, even fixed coughing isn't exactly great Pokemon design. For bad Pokemon design, I would like to look at the 2 piles of sludge with eyes, Grimer and Muck. Yep. How about the Pokeball and Upside Down Pokeball, Voltorb and Electrode? I can appreciate how they were used as pseudo-mimics inside the power plant, but I think the design is lazy. Finally, for some reason, when people mention their distaste of inanimate objects being Pokemon, they never bring up Magnemite or Magneton. The magnet that evolves into 3 magnets stuck together. It's not my favorite. I think the Gen 1 sprite for Pikachu is worth pointing out for its fat Pikachu design, that was later changed to make Pikachu in the games look more like its counterpart in the anime. What about the good designs from Generation 1? All of the starters in their final evolutions are excellent examples of what Pokemon should look like. The middle stages of the starters have always seemed like awkward teenagers to me. Jigglypuff is another Pokemon that I think has great design. Clefairy is a second pink Pokemon that I think has an excellent design for a Generation 1 Pokemon. My favorite part of Generation 1 might be the sounds of the game. Except for the Pokemon cries, that is. The Pokemon cries leave much to be desired, and there's a reason that in the anime they resort to having Pokemon saying their name. However, the music in the game is excellent, with many of the themes returning in later games. The Pokemon Center's healing music has become an icon of the series. All credit here goes to Junichi Masuda, who was only 28 when Red and Green were released in Japan. So, this is the last thing that I'm going to record, and I'm doing this as I'm editing the rest of the audio. But I need to talk about nostalgia for Generation 1. Or, more accurately, nostalgia for Kanto. You see, there were a lot of good pieces of the Pokemon franchise that were about Kanto. The Indigo League anime, the first manga, the first 2 Pokemon movies are all based around Kanto or Kanto Pokemon, and all of them are very good. By that logic, if everything else about Kanto was good, the Generation 1 games must have also been good. Except that they weren't. I think people have this opinion that they are good because everything else was so good. It contributes to this nostalgia factor that I don't think the Generation 1 games deserve. Conclusion. The Generation 1 games are glitchy messes with bad graphics. And even by the standards of 1996, they weren't all that well designed. I went in knowing this, and dreading playing them. But something I didn't expect happened shortly after I beat Brock and entered Mount Moon. I started having fun with the games. I didn't want to have to say this, because I did not want to have to recommend playing Generation 1 Pokemon games to anyone. But maybe there's a place to find joy in it for an experienced Pokemon player, going in knowing all of the shortcomings of the game, and being willing to exploit them. I found most of my fun from using Pokemon that I wouldn't usually use, and exploiting the AI in X items, especially during the Elite Four run. And I think that might be the reason why these games got popular. They are actually fun to play. Are the first-gen games objectively good? Absolutely not. Not by today's standards, not by 1996 standards, and it only took Game Freak 8 years to release the games totally remade in Fire Red and Leaf Green. The best thing I can say about the original games is that there's still ways to enjoy playing, partially in spite of their mistakes, and partially due to them. The remakes are much better games in both graphics and intention, but still suffer from some of the original design choices around the region of Kanto. I think the biggest improvement made by Fire Red and Leaf Green is the speed of the games. Battles seem to go quicker, the running shoes make navigating the map before getting the bike quicker. I can say with absolute certainty that if 9 more generations of Pokemon were made, I doubt a worse Pokemon game could be made than Generation 1 games. At least on a balance concept. Game Freak has learned way too much about how to make a Pokemon game and how it's supposed to work to regress to the low of these first games. Should you play Red, Blue, or Yellow? No. If you want to play through Kanto these days, the best route's probably playing Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee. And if you really want a more traditional experience, play Fire Red or Leaf Green.